But today we are going to be focusing on Edge, Teams, and Project. We're going to go through some of these bits and pieces. And for those of you that have followed these in the past, or this particular this collection of webinars, we do this at quite a lot of pace, or quite quickly, I should say. But don't worry if you don't follow it all. We've got lots of videos to show you, and this is recorded. You'll be able to come back and watch that and slow various bits down. So if anything piques your interest today, you don't quite catch how we did it today, don't worry, you'll be able to come back and watch that later on anyway. So hopefully we've got a few people rolling in as we speak. So I think what we'll do, we're a minute or two after 11, aren't we? So I think we'll get underway, shall we? Let's get going. So, right, agenda today then. So as I just mentioned, we're going to focus on Edge, Microsoft Edge web browser. We're going to talk about Microsoft Teams, and we're going to show you various little bits and pieces that you can do within these platforms, and then introduce a tool that we call Microsoft Project. But I actually want to talk about Project and something else called Planner and something else called To Do, and really kind of introduce that as a product to go and explore and find out more about. And then we will probably do a much more in-depth dive into that at some point in the future. So we'll also be talking about where to get some more information. And then, as always, if you've got any questions, feel free to fire them away during the webinar, because now I can't see your questions immediately, so we tend to roll through it. But there's a period of time at the end that will allow us to basically need to jump back in again and answer any questions. So if there's anything you want me to clarify, go into a bit more detail on, I will do my best to answer that for you at the end of the webinar. All right. So, by the way, I should say that's ask those questions in the chat box, which is to your right or left or wherever it is on your screen right now. Just feel free to fire stuff in there. We have got some of my colleagues sitting around anyway, so they might be able to answer that for you whilst we're underway. So we're going to get started with Edge. Okay, Microsoft Edge. Now, this is a web browser. It's live without kind of boring everybody too much. We always had a web browser called Internet Explorer, and for the real geeks amongst you, there was lots of chaos about that many years ago with something called Netscape. Fascinating story, but we're not going into that today. But we are now in a kind of battle of two titans, all right, in the world of web browsers. We've got Google Chrome, and we've got Microsoft, or back in the day, maybe let's say 4 or 5 years ago, Internet Explorer. And I think everybody knew that Internet Explorer was pretty rubbish, in all honesty, right? It was nowhere near as quick as Chrome. Chrome far much easier to install, much easier to deploy. Everything just rendered well on it. And Internet Explorer was just sort of lagging behind and wasn't very good. The reason Google Chrome is so good is it was built on an open source piece of software called Chromium, all right? And the key takeaway is that Microsoft pretty much accepted defeat and said, okay, we need to build a web browser on the same platform as Google have. So Google have Google Chrome built on Chromium, and Microsoft Edge, which is the new version of Internet Explorer, is also built on Chromium. So the truth is that these two web browsers are basically the same thing. All right, they do the same things, they work the same way, they're pretty much as quick as each other, and it's all based on that underlying architecture underneath it. But there's a few bells and whistles. Both of them got their uniqueness to them, but probably the best thing about Edge in this scenario is that because it's a Microsoft technology, it's more intricately entwined and ingrained into the rest of your Microsoft stack. So if you use Microsoft 365 as a platform for your organization, then little things like signing into my laptop with my Microsoft account and opening up Microsoft Edge means that I'm automatically signed into Microsoft Edge. And when I go to a web page which requires me to log in with my Microsoft account, it automatically signs me in. If I try to do that in Google Chrome, there's a pretty good chance I'll be challenged with a, hey, put your username and password in. Okay, because it hasn't got that native integration. If there are techies in the room, then of course lots of them will be going, hang on a minute, you can actually do that. You're right, you can do that with hacks and registry bits and pieces and turning Chrome settings on. But out of the box, Edge is just built to work seamlessly across the estate. All right. So it's a very, very powerful web browser. It's on par with Google Chrome nowadays. So if you are running Chrome, then fair enough. But probably the key one key difference is updates. Okay, so we're just going to lean to cybersecurity for a few seconds, just to give you a bit of an understanding of why this is important, without going too much off on a tangent before we get into all the little tips and tricks. We have a process of updating, right? So you've often seen, I'm sure, on your laptop, you log into your laptop in the morning and it says it's doing updates and it's spinning. And it's, everyone finds it annoying and throw a thing out the window, whatever. But But it's important that happens, right? It's important to get those security updates and those patches on because we want to stop malicious actors or hackers, let's call them, from getting into your computer and doing bad things. They do that by exploiting vulnerabilities, and we patch those vulnerabilities. And in Microsoft's world, that's done through Windows Update. You'll see that happen, and it updates everything to do with Microsoft on your computer. So brilliant. My computer could be as up to date as I like, and everything's kind of sorted out. Windows is patched, and the operating system only is brilliant. But the problem is, it's not patching Google Chrome. So if I wanted to be a really bad actor, the first thing I would do, I'd log into your computer, I'd gain access through whatever, and then I'd probably just not even bother trying to get into any of your Microsoft technologies. Because I can tell by the version number of your Windows operating system where you're at, all right? And if you're all fully up, all fully patched, I'm not going to bother. But what I am going to try and get into is any other applications that you've got installed which you've not updated for a long time. We call that process third-party patching, right? As a service. So Google Chrome, the chances are, if you looked at your Google Chrome version, it's probably a few versions out of date. Now, if it's a few versions out of date, that means there's vulnerabilities in there that I can exploit and I can execute code through. I can take control of the computer in a more controlling way. I can widen my net into the wider business and the wider network. So it's really important that things are always patched, but that means that you've got Windows updates doing your Microsoft stuff, and then you have to pay for this other service to patch Chrome and Adobe and various other applications, right? So great thing about Edge is it's a Microsoft platform. So when you get your Windows update, it patches Edge. So actually much more secure from that perspective. Right, let's not linger too much on that. Let's talk about some interesting fun stuff. So we're going to go through some of these bits. You're going to see some videos somewhere around my head somewhere, which basically are going to be quite quick, okay, quite fast paced. We've got quite a bit to talk about today. So again, hopefully you catch up with it. A lot of these things you might already know. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Some of these things you might already know. Hopefully some of them you quite know exist, but you don't know how to use them. So changing the default search engine to Google. So if you're in Microsoft Edge, one of the things everybody hates, right, is you go into Edge and you open it up and it comes up this web browser called Bing, which we all know, right? It's Microsoft's web browser. It's not very good. We all know that. Again, I'm a Microsoft person, but I will accept that Google is pretty good at this. If I go into my settings inside Microsoft Edge, and I go to privacy search and services, as I scroll down, you're going to see an option there which talks about the ability to change my default web browser. All right, so address bar and search, and there's a drop down there that says, okay, well, which search engine do you want to use by default? This means that when I'm in the address bar, where I'd normally type www something and go to a website, I can just type my search term and then hit enter, and it will use whichever search engine I've selected in there. So if you use Google all the time, I probably recommend you still do today, to be honest. Go and use Google, change that setting to Google. If your computer is managed by your IT department, there's a good chance they've probably deployed that for you already, and it's managed anyway. So, but little tip for home, if you are wondering why you've got to keep going to Google all the time, type it in, just change your default, all right? Screen capture within the browser, another great tool. You know, it's very often we want to take screenshots of web pages, and we might be pressing print screen on our computer. We might be using something called the Windows screenshotting tool or Snip. To capture areas of our web page. But you can actually do that inside a web browser. So clicking on the three little dots, we come down to an option there called screenshot, and screenshot will give us three options across the top. First one is to capture an area. Allows me to draw a box around a logo or something I need. Capture a screen area, which means captures just what I've got invisible in front of my screen as it stands at the moment. But probably the most useful is to capture the full page. And what that does is it screenshots the whole website from the top to the bottom. So when I scroll through a website, it takes a screenshot of the whole page. And when I grab that screenshot, I can annotate, I can draw over it, I can make changes to it. Brilliant for like product design and things like that. It's certainly if you're in marketing team, you're working on your website, right? So you can absolutely circle stuff, you can pull stuff out, and you can do that. And because it's in your clipboard, you can just go into any other application and paste it. And there's a full length screenshot of the landing page for the TaylorMade website. Okay, so paste it into whatever you like, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or anything else that can take an image. Okay, so useful tool. Organizing and sharing tabs. Now, we're probably all guilty of having loads and loads and loads and loads of tabs open in our web browser. And it's worth saying that even if I didn't convince you with my first conversation about moving from Chrome to Edge, a lot of these things work in Chrome exactly the same way because they're both exactly the same tools ultimately. So bear that in mind. So if you're seeing this stuff saying, oh, well, that's great, but I can't use it because we use Chrome, well, you can probably do it in Chrome the same way. So organizing and sharing tabs. One of the things you can do here, obviously, I've got a web page. Maybe I need to duplicate that. I need another tab. I need to run the website and fill the forms in. And I want to create lots of them. I just right click on the tab and duplicate it, right? I can also pin it. So right click and pin. That puts the tab right at the beginning of my web browser. That means I can just jump back in there. I know I go to that place all the time. It's kind of like favorites, but a bit more practical. And we can also shove something to the sidebar. All right, so same process, right click the sidebar. And that allows me to run two websites or run two tabs in separate areas. Now, that's if you've got two screens, you probably don't need to do that. But if you're sat on your laptop with one screen and you want to look at two websites and compare something, and you're flicking between the two tabs, it's actually quite irritating. So moving it to the sidebar means that you can drag that little bar out and you can have two pages and you just compare the two on your single screen laptop environment. And the last really cool feature is this workspace piece that's happening right here. This allows me to take lots of websites that I've got, pin them all together and put them in a collection and share them with other people in my team. Now, this only really works within this Microsoft world because I'm logged in. When I opened up Edge, it signed in with my Microsoft account, my work account. Although I'm taking credit for a lot of Sam's work today, by the way, from the marketing team, but who's created most of these videos. But it allows me basically to create this blank workspace, pin lots of different websites that maybe I use and people in my team use, and we collaborate on across in our department, and we can pin them into a workspace, and then I can share that whole workspace with other people who can then contribute and add their own websites in. So imagine favorites, but like a collective shared favorites for everybody across my department. And that's a tool within Edge. And of course, it's nice and secure because it's all wrapped around my 365 stuff. Now, that isn't going to work in Chrome the same way. All right. So saving your passwords, another great one. Look, hopefully everybody understands how this one works. But let's take a website. We've got LinkedIn. All right. So we're going to log in with my LinkedIn account. And of course, most web browsers will go, hey, hang on a minute. You just signed into a login page. Do you want me to save that password? And of course, yes. I'm going to choose yes, and I'm going to save it. If we don't have a better password, now I encourage you to find a better password manager, but this is fine. It also stores not just passwords, but credit card details, codes, bits and pieces that you'll use, keys, whatnot. And if we come into our settings here, you can see if I choose passwords, it will list all the sites that I've got credentials saved for. I can delete them. I can even view the password by clicking on the little arrow at the side, right? So it's showing me what the password was that I used to sign into that website. So if you've forgotten the password, that website you want to log into, and you know it's saved, but it's obviously changed or something's gone wrong, come to the settings, you've got to go and find that password, and you remember, oh yeah, put an exclamation mark on the end, which is generally what people do. So so that's how you get to those bits and pieces, all right, and you have the ability to go in and view those passwords. A key takeaway though is by using Edge, those passwords are stored into my account and synchronized between all the devices I use. So if I've got the Edge app on my iPhone, for example, if I open up the Edge web browser app on my iPhone, all the passwords I stored on my laptop are going to log me straight in on my phone as well. So it synchronizes those passwords across all Edge tools that I have on whatever device I'm using. It's not fair to say that's unique to Microsoft. It's definitely not. Google does the same thing, but it requires a Google account. So sharing URLs, this is an interesting one. It might be useful, might not. But if you've ever gone and tried to copy a URL and then pasted that URL into Word, and it doesn't come out with the URL, it comes out with the title of the web page. In other words, it does this. If I grab that, copy that URL there, and I go to another application, I just paste that URL in, it doesn't say www.tmtech.co.uk, it says TaylorMade Technologies. It's taking the title of the web page. That might be great. It's still a hyperlink. If I click on it, it'll take me to the right place. But I might want to change that behavior because sometimes it's a bit irritating. So if I come down here and I jump into settings, we can adjust that behavior and say, actually, when I copy and paste something, I want it either to paste the link, which is what you just saw. So in other words, it's the title, and if I click on it, it takes me to the page, or plain text, which means that it just pastes the URL. So sometimes if you're working in Word and you need to paste a load of websites in, and it just keeps putting the things in all the time. I've seen lots of people copy the URL, go to Notepad, paste it in there, copy it out of Notepad, paste it in the Word. You don't need to do that, right? You can just either just change this setting, which means it will just act in another way, or there's a really handy thing there, leave it as is, but do Control Shift and V, and it won't paste the title in, it will just paste the actual URL in, all right? Might be useful to some of you, might not to others. Avoid distractions with reading mode, really cool tool. Okay, so platform called, takes advantage of something called Immersive Reader. This is a website, all right, great, fantastic, but it's got loads of adverts down the side, it's got loads of distractions. I'm not interested in all the other garbage that's around it. I just want to read the text that's actually in my page. So I can go into reading mode or immersive reading mode, right? And what that does is it strips out all the other rubbish and just gives me the text and probably the main pictures if it identifies them as main pictures. The key here is that, I'm getting a bit older now. My eyes are starting to go. I've been in IT far too long. I can't read things very well. So actually what I can do is start to adjust the layout of this web page, all right? So I can make that text bigger. I can change the font. I can make it easier to read if on certain colors and different backgrounds. And I might want to put it on a black background with white text, for example, whatever. But as you can see there, I've got loads of options, right? But it's cut away all the clutter, all the clutter, I should say. Now, one environment this is absolutely pivotal in is things like education. So if you're coming in from the education sector, I'm sure, hopefully you're already aware of Immersive Reader. If you're in the education sector, this is Immersive Reader in the web environment, but obviously great when the students are kind of working through a web page. They've got loads of adverts everywhere, and it's just a distraction. The kids are going to click on that link and they're going to end up on another website. Right? So using Immersive Reader, you can drive that. Okay, you can actually create a link to the Immersive Reader version of the web page. So that allows you to cut away all that distraction. The students can then work on that. And obviously that ability that we just saw a minute ago where it went all black and it focused in online, great for really directed reading, allowing the students to work on particular words. So either end of the spectrum, either we're at the young end and we're learning how to read, or like me, you're at the other end and you just can't read anymore because your eyes have gone, then this is quite useful. So next one, speeding up your PC. So how often do we use our computer? The thing slows down, we're getting frustrated. I'm going to throw the thing out the window in a minute. Like, why is it so slow? It's annoying me, da, 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 da. And then we go and shut our web browser down and suddenly everything's all right again. Okay, it happens all the time. And the reason for that is that we've got like a million tabs open, but it's irritating, isn't it? When you've got a million tabs open, you probably use a lot of those tabs most of the time. It's annoying every time you've got to go back and go and relaunch those websites. But if only they could stay open, but not use all the resources of the computer. Well, you can do that, right? We have this concept of sleeping tabs. So if we go into settings again within the browser, we have the ability to come over to kind of performance, so system and performance, all right? And as we come down here, we have this toggle, which is typically off, I think, by default, but there's an option to turn on sleeping tabs there. And what it also allows us to do is fade sleeping tabs. I'll explain what that is in a minute and how long we want these things to go to sleep for and certain sites we don't want it to have. So let me explain in a bit more detail what these things do. So a sleeping tab basically means, let's say we're running, most websites get their information dynamically. They're constantly talking to the web server that is being served up from, going backwards and forwards saying, hey, has anything changed? Do I need to update this? Do I need to change the picture here? Like if you're watching YouTube or something, you can imagine it's just constantly streaming information. You could go to another tab, but YouTube is still communicating behind the scenes. I'm now on the BBC website, but I was on YouTube a minute ago. YouTube is still now actively doing stuff with YouTube in the background, right? And I minimize Edge or I minimize Chrome. This works the same thing on Chrome. Minimize Chrome, that's still running. I'm still using resources on your computer and accessing stuff. It's slowing your machine down. So what fading tabs allows us to do is to basically pause those tabs after a certain number of minutes to stop them from running. Stop them communicating with the back end until I click on the tab and then it'll come back to life again. All right, and then we can carry on. So I can say how long do I need it to be quiet for? That ability to fade sleeping tabs means that my tabs across the top go grey, basically. They fade out. So I know that they're not active. But there are also, there are certain apps that we don't want to do, like WhatsApp there at the top. It's a messaging app. If that went to sleep, then I wouldn't get the messages. So there are certain environments where we need to make sure that certain websites don't go to sleep. So that's that option there where it says never put these sites to sleep. I can go in there and go and add in whatsapp.com or whatever it is. So and then it won't ever go to sleep. It'll just stay there active because that's a messaging app. I need that live. I need that awake all the time. So quite a cool thing, very useful. Again, you may or may not be able to configure some of these things because it might be managed by policy. But if you think these things are useful within the business, then absolutely go and have a chat with the IT department. And of course, in many cases, we may well be your IT department, in which case, come and have a chat with us. And then lastly, viewing and annotating PDFs. Lots of people are aware that PDFs can be opened in web browsers. Lots of you will open a PDF and it opens in Chrome or opens in Edge or whatever it looks like. More commonly, Adobe PDF reader. Two things, you can open it in an open Chrome. You can also drag a PDF and just drop it on your web browser and it'll open it up. But this is really actually quite a decent PDF tool. So it allows us obviously to have a navigation menu down the side so I can see all the pages and I can skip around. Great, nice and simple. But it also allows me to annotate over the top of the PDF. So I can highlight areas of text, I can draw pictures on it, So we can use a pen and choose colors and thickness of my lines and all these sorts of things. So kind of like a whiteboard. So we talked about Microsoft Whiteboard in a previous one. This is like taking a PDF document and put a whiteboard over the top, just annotating on it. So it might, useful in the publishing industry, obviously, because you might get a proof through, but you've got a PDF version, not a Word document version. You want to make changes, you want to highlight things. Most people will go back and say, hey, can you send me the Word document, or can you send me whatever the original document format was, so that I can add my comments to it. But actually, you can just open it and write all over it. So this isn't unique to Edge's PDF reader, but it's pretty cool. So I can go and put text in there as well, probably really, really useful. And the last thing to say is there's a really powerful translation tool in there. So if you do work with other countries, and like as we do, we've got customers that English isn't their native tongue, I can just go and copy a period of text and then choose a language that I want to shift it into. So it's detected it as English. This is a bit like Google Translate. I'm saying Google far too much for a Microsoft presentation, aren't I? But hey, but I can translate into another language, which is really useful actually. So if let's say I've received a PDF from a supplier and it's all in French, or an invoice, or whatever it looks like, whatever the content of that PDF document is, and I can't read it, or the terms are in a different language or whatever, then I can go and open the PDF up and just highlight that bit of text and translate it and understand what's being said before I maybe sign something. So very cool. Right. Little bonus one. You know me well enough that you're not going to get through a whole webinar with me without me mentioning AI. So little one about Copilot, right? So one of the things you will find inside Microsoft Edge is Copilot. Now, this is not Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is Copilot for Web, all right? So if you go into Edge, it'll be all over the place. It might be in the top right-hand corner. It might be in the search bar, that this little icon, the kind of semicircular icon that looks like that, is Copilot. Now, this is ChatGPT. So if you use ChatGPT, then this is ChatGPT in a box. It's built into your web browser now. So if you are paying for that, you probably can get away with unless you're at the cutting edge of AI, this will suffice absolutely fine. It draws pictures, it does text, it does all sorts of things. So and it's as powerful as ChatGPT is, so because it's basically based on the same thing. We'll talk about AI a lot more in the future. We've got another webinar coming up. We'll go into this in more detail, but just a heads up really that the differences here. I can ask this Copilot to do things for me, and it will go and research all the information on the internet, not your documents, not the things stored in your office in SharePoint and OneDrive and all that sort of stuff. That's a different Copilot, but this one allows me to look at the information that's stored on the internet. So if I don't know how to do something in Excel, for example, as per that request that we've got there, I can say, how do I do this in Excel? And it just comes back saying, hey, go here, go and open a spreadsheet, select the cell where you want to create your function, enter the average function and do X, Y, and Z. All right, so really useful when you don't know how to do something, just go and ask Copilot, how do I do this? And it will give you some advice, all right? Very, very useful. So, but it's also incredibly creative. Just as a side note, I've said before, but I read my daughter bedtime stories and I ask her what happened today and do various bits and pieces. I did this and I did this and I did this, and I plumb all that into Copilot, and then Copilot spits me out a bedtime story that I read her before she goes to bed. She relates to it because it's activities, and the little girl in the story is called Ava and things like that. So quite cool. Slightly not business focused, is it? But I just think it's a cool AI function. And then finally, coming back to that sort of business focus, is like we've asked it, how do I do something? We've asked it to be creative, but now actually I want you to kind of compose me a professional email to reply to somebody. Now we start to venture into this sort of difficult world of, well, hang on a minute, as far as I'm aware, I shouldn't be pasting stuff into Copilot or into ChatGPT, things like that. You're absolutely right. You shouldn't be copying company data, pasting it into ChatGPT, and then asking questions of the data you pasted in. Reason for that is you are lifting data from your business and you are pasting it into a platform which is hosted in the US, and suddenly you're into this whole world of GDPR and government legislation and regulation around what you can do with data. So absolutely avoid that. However, Copilot for Web within your Microsoft Edge environment, all of this is happening within your Microsoft 365 environment. And assuming your Microsoft 365 environment is based in the UK, it is actually all encrypted and secured and kept within your environment. So I'm not saying that anybody on the call is allowed to go and copy that data and paste it into this, but actually your business is much more likely to be fine with that, because actually that information never leaves your organization. Okay, it stays where it is. All right. Right. So very, very cool. We've covered a few bits and pieces there on Edge. Hopefully some of those bits were useful. We're going to continue to go at pace. How we're doing? We probably need to speed up, in all honesty. So get ready for it. We're going to talk about Teams. Okay, so lots of us are using Teams. Some of you I appreciate may not, but hopefully this is useful to those of you that are. So scheduling messages for later, right? When we're in Microsoft Teams, I want to send a message to somebody. I need them to do an action, but maybe at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So maybe I want to send Sam a message, or in this example, this is logged in as Sam, and Sam is going to send a message to Louise to do something, but at a later date. So it might be to remind her that tomorrow morning she needs to do something. Now, there's no point in me telling her at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because she'll forget by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I actually want to encourage her or remind her first thing in the morning. All right. So I can write my message out as I normally do inside Microsoft Teams, and there's a slight adjustment to what we do. Now you'll be aware that I can hit enter, obviously at that point it just posts the message. But if I right click on the little send icon, so right click on it, it will give me a calendar and a date option, and I can choose what time and day that I want to send that message to that individual. So not always useful, but actually sometimes it is really useful, right? Certainly if I want to set out reminders and get people to do things at a point in the future. Yeah, useful one. So next one is marking messages as urgent. Now we'll all be possibly familiar with this inside Microsoft Outlook. I can send an urgent email, all right, and I get a little bell, same sort of concept. The difference with this within Teams is that when I send a chat, okay, and I mark it as urgent, it will harass that person and remind them constantly that they need to look at the message that I've just sent them. So we're going to type something out, and Sam here is saying, look, this is really important, we get that done ASAP. Click that little plus button. Lots of cool things in there, scheduling meetings, scheduling messages and stuff, but set delivery options and change it to urgent, and it will tell you what it's going to do. Okay, so when we choose urgent, it's going to ping up and say, notify the recipient every 2 minutes for the next 20 minutes. So when we receive a message on Teams, it pings up on our screen and we know it's there. By sending an urgent message, what that's going to do is I'm going to constantly get that thing popping up on my screen. So you can use that to irritate your colleagues or use it constructively to get hold of them if you really need to, okay? And I apologize to those of you that are going to go and do that to the person you dislike in the office. But marking received messages as unread. This is quite useful. It's very often that I'm kind of plowing through my list of things to do and I see a message, but I'm not in a position to instantly respond. I use my phone quite a lot. I read a message on my phone and go, right, once I'm out of what I'm doing, I'll go and respond to that. And of course, I get back to my desk and 6 other people message me, and now it's not marked as read anymore. So quite simple, click 3 little dots, all right, and you get a bunch of options in there around various other things you can do, but you can mark it basically back as being unread. So you can mark that user back as being unread. There is an option there as well. We'll cover this in another one, but about notifying when that individual is available. So if they're busy, you can set it to notify you when that individual it comes away from having a little red circle saying busy back to being available. It will ping you and say, hey, Louise is available now. Quite useful. So set your status and your duration. So what do I mean by status? What I'm talking about is this available, away, offline, all that stuff. Quite simple to do this. And this is a bit like out of office, but it's more focused around Teams, should we say, rather than replying back with emails and things like that. I can do that here, but this is a bit different. So I've got these statuses available, busy, things like that, but there's an option there for duration. So I can say, look, I'm going to be, or I want to appear away for how long? 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours today, this week, or some sort of customized number in between. So I then also get an option underneath it to say, where am I working? I might be in the office, I might be working remote. And I can also put a status message in there saying, hey, I'm busy, I'm at a customer conference today, therefore I'm not going to be able to get back to you straight away. If it's urgent, get hold of so-and-so. That isn't going to reply when someone emails me, but it is going to reply when someone Teams messages me, all right? And the same option there, I might have spotted it, but if you click on it, there is a button at the bottom about setting your out of office response, and that will then impact your email environment as well. So there's your option there to kind of move things away. It's really useful for me and my team because I can go in there and set my status as being remote, which people know if I'm available and remote, it means I'm working, but I'm probably on a customer site, or I'm probably out and about, or I'm driving, or whatever it looks like, right? But if I'm available and in the office, they can come walk over and grab me from the desk. So useful things like that. Tagging people in group chats. This is hopefully something lots of you are experimenting with already. You might be really familiar with it. This is just really in here for those of you that don't really understand the benefit of tagging somebody. So here I've got a text or I've got a chat going on, and you may have noticed there that when you do the @ symbol and you start typing a name, a box pops up with all your colleagues in it, and then you can choose them, all right? And you can select it. So it'll put them in blue there, and be a link to that user. But what that means is that that individual gets a specific activity assigned to them, and they get pinged in Teams. So if this is a big group chat with like 15 people in it, now I might not be tracking that group chat because there's loads of stuff, loads of chat going on between the other 14 members. But if someone puts @ Scott Weedon in there, it's going to ping me and say, you were just mentioned here, you need to come and click on it. If I click on that, it takes me to that point in the chat where someone specifically mentioned me, and there was probably some sort of action or requirement for me to do something. It also appears in your activity area, which is in the top left-hand corner, that bell symbol. That's kind of like your list of to-dos inside Microsoft Teams. It will show you where you've missed a call, you've had this, someone's mentioned you, you've received messages from X, Y, and Z. All right. So lots of kind of neat little bits and pieces within that. Now, probably one of the most powerful things, if you use Teams a lot, you'll be using it for meetings and bits and pieces like that. So recording, transcribing, and using live captions. So for those of you that have followed this journey that we do with this tips and tricks seminars, you'll heard me talking about Mr. Sam Smith. You finally get to see the man himself there setting up a meeting that he's going to invite Louise to, who is also another fundamental person behind getting these bits going within the marketing team. So my opportunity to thank you both for doing these videos and stuff. So we're going to bring Louise in, and really cool feature. Hopefully you're aware this already exists about recording, but if we effectively start chatting and start having a conversation, we have this option to click on the 3 little dots and record and transcribe. Again, these might be disabled depending on your business and your policies. But if we start a transcription or a recording and transcribing, it will record the video feed and it will record the text, the things that are being said. And we can also turn on live captions, which you'll see in a moment there. So you can see Sam starting to talk now. It's a demo, so he's waffling, all right. We can also come down and choose underneath our language and speech area, you can turn on live captions. I start panicking now. I have to give them a start going in the wrong place. So turn on live captions, where as soon as they start talking, it just basically writes out what's being said, okay, and capturing that information. So if you are, again, let's pick on my age and say that my hearing is starting to go a bit now as well. Well, actually, I can just sit there and read. Maybe I'm sat on a train, right? And I'm probably not needing to bring anything to this meeting, but I just want to sit there and be aware of what's being said. And maybe I'll pipe up in the chat if I need to. I can just sit there and read the conversation that's being had. There are also more advanced SKUs within Teams that allow us to translate that into another language. So effectively universal translation, where I can speak in English, it comes out in French to the other person, let's say, or any other language in the world. They speak in French and it comes out in English to me. So cool, very cool. Right, once we've had that meeting and it's been recorded, where does it go? So hopefully you may have seen this happen. It ends up in that chat area within Teams. You can click on that meeting request. There's some other great stats in there. We should point out actually like things like attendance, who actually attended the meeting, who didn't, and et cetera. But have a look at, go and explore those bits, but we're not focusing on that today. The transcript section, we just click on that and it will list it out. So if I missed that meeting, so I wasn't there to watch it, then I can just go and view the transcript and read the transcript through. But the actual video recording gets stored in something called Stream, which is again within your 365 environment. All those meeting and all that information is secured by Office 365. And within Stream, this is like YouTube for your business. Again, we've talked about this in the past, so please encourage you to go and have a look at some of those other webinars. But what we've got within there is the transcripts and all the conversations that are being had. And I can watch the video here and just watch the whole meeting. More importantly, there might have been a specific thing that was mentioned within the meeting, and I can search there on the right-hand side. I could type in a search for a particular word, and it will skip down the transcript to where that word got mentioned. If I click on that, it will take me to that part of the video and then allow me to just kind of press play and just watch the 2 minutes of the video that I'm interested in. That isn't a co-pilot thing. That's not an AI thing. That is just Stream, right? That's just baked into all Microsoft 365 environments. But obviously that can get even more enhanced if you do start to bring AI into the conversation. And we're covering this now because more and more of our customers are starting to use things like Copilot. So very powerful, right? So we've got a meeting here between me and Sam. We're talking about the famous TMT Thunderbolt motorbike and then this new launch. Now, The video itself was recorded and transcribed, which means that Copilot can read all of the information and all of the text that was included within that conversation, and it can summarize it for me. So it says, look, you talked about social media campaigns, you talked about influencer partnerships, you talked about technical aspects of contingency and planning. And it gives me these little citations. So as I hover over these things like 1 minute 50 and 1 minute 24, it skips me to those parts of the video where we talked about that thing. Really, really cool. Probably the most powerful feature of all of this is the ability for Copilot to create the minutes of my meetings. All right. So, you know, in tailor-made, we don't have people writing minutes anymore. We've absolutely embraced this because I see it as a great opportunity to save time. And now it spits out effectively a minute agenda. It says these are all the things you talked about. Here were the actions, and here was the things that were discussed. All right, so you can see that the team needs to finalise logistics, ensure enough bikes at convenient locations. The team needs to ensure consistent and compelling messaging across the channels. You know, if I referenced individuals and people, then potentially they would come up in there. I'd be able to assign them tasks and bits and pieces, which we'll get onto in a second. And then it also has the ability to do some other clever stuff. Now, we are going to go into this in way more detail in the next webinar when we talk about AI as a whole, and we talk about ChatGPT and Copilot and the other models that exist and whether they're useful or not. So hopefully you'll come and join me for that. But you can do clever things like asking, was there any tension in that meeting? Did someone disagree? Was there key things that I need to be aware of as a HR manager or just as a manager of a department, right? With my team, you know, it's always healthy and good to have a bit of conflict in a meeting, people disagreeing. It means that you come up with a better option or different perspectives. So really, really powerful tool. All right. Right. So hopefully, again, a few things there within Teams that maybe you knew about or were new to you or you knew existed, but how did I get to them? Fantastic. Right. Last thing that we're going to talk about is Microsoft Project. Now, we're actually going to talk about three things within Project. We're going to talk about To-Do, Planner, and Project. And the difference between these three things, they're all Microsoft technologies. To-Do and Planner come in as part of your Office 365 licensing. Okay, it's not really unless you want to like a non-existent SKU, as we call it. So it's almost free. Then you won't have Planner. But if you've got a business standard, business premium, things like that, then this Planner functionality starts to get baked into that. Now, why would we use these three things? All three of these allow me to get organized. All right. And then when we talk about project management, what we're really talking about is getting organized. Now, whether it's me getting myself organized, me getting my department organized, or whether it's me getting my entire business or a service or product we deliver organized, that will define which of these three things is possibly the best thing to use. So let's start on the right-hand side. If I just want to get organized, then we have this idea of to-dos. All right, and this is its own standalone thing now. Used to be pretty much in Outlook, we used to flag our emails, right? And we'd have a little red flag, and that meant that was something, an action that we needed to do. And then Microsoft have evolved that technology into its own stand-up thing. You'll find that inside Outlook now. There's a little icon on the left-hand side that looks like that blue tick. And you'll go in there and you'll find that all the emails you flagged will be listed in to-dos. But you can also add other to-dos that aren't emails, right? So I can create a task list of actions that I need to do, and I can set times against them. It will remind me and it will ping up on all my devices and tell me that I need to get various things done. But it is quite a personal approach. Planner is much more collaborative around my entire department and things that I want to do for my whole team. So I can create tasks, and we're going to show you that in a second. I can create tasks and I can assign those tasks to different people, and we can all collaborate in one place. That's cool. And then Microsoft Project is getting a product or service done. Now, you probably don't need Microsoft Project, in all honesty, unless you are delivering very large scale business, let's say multi-million-pound projects. Maybe it doesn't need to be multi-million, maybe I'm exaggerating, but very big projects where you need intricate control over tiny little elements of each of those tasks. All right, your budgeting, you want to manage spend, you want to do timesheets, things like that. All of that absolutely comes in Microsoft Project, but it is an additional cost. The point of today is to challenge whether or not you need that, okay, unless you are delivering a very, very large scale project, because Planner and To-Do might fit the bill. Now, Planner and To-Do, or Planner, I would say, kind of stacks up against things like Asana and Monday.com, if you use those platforms, all right? probably stitched in with a bit of SharePoint and other bits and pieces within the Microsoft stack, to be totally honest. But fundamentally, 99% of what these platforms do can be done inside Planner. So, but there's a few reasons why you might choose to use that Microsoft platform over a third-party hosted project management solution. One is security. First thing to say, right, let's say you are working on a project. If it's a project, it's probably involving a customer. Therefore, you've got key stakeholders, people that you're engaging with at your customer. So you've got their names, their email addresses. You've got physical addresses where projects and tasks are taking place. And you're capturing all that information. And then you're plumbing that into Monday.com. And you're running your projects up there. The problem is that you just lifted their data. So not your data, your customer's data. And put it in a platform hosted in America. So immediate GDPR problem. So there are obviously ways of hosting that information in the UK, but check you've done that. The great thing about obviously the Microsoft stack is that information, that whole planning environment built inside, again, within your 365 bubble. It's all hosted within and protected by all the security services that you or your IT department wrap around that. So actually the information is secure. It probably should be kept in the UK if it's configured properly. So security key one, right? Integration. Now, Monday.com, let's take an example, right? So I've got a spreadsheet. I started with a spreadsheet or a list. So I opened up Excel, I created a bunch of tasks that I need to do. I did a bit of brainstorming there, and then I copied those tasks up and I moved them into Monday.com, or maybe I created them in Monday.com in fairness. But at some point then I've got to go and deliver this project to someone, key stakeholder within my business or the customer. Chances are I need a PowerPoint slide now. So I'm going to open up a PowerPoint slide. I'm going to copy all my information out of Monday.com. I'm going to put it in PowerPoint. You kind of hopefully see where I'm going with this, right? Is that the information, you've taken the information probably from a Microsoft platform, and the output is to deliver it in a Microsoft platform. So why are you wasting your time moving this stuff around when you could use lots of native integration, right? So you can go to Planner and export to a spreadsheet, right? And stick it out into a table that you can then pop into a PowerPoint slide. But the key thing here is the data, right? How long did a task take? How many minutes, how many hours, how many days? You know, did we overrun? What's been pushed out? What's changed? It's the data behind it that's really important, and the actual intricate understanding of how well a project has gone. We can pull that information out and deliver it in things like Power BI. So reporting suddenly gets so much more powerful. It's just there, ready for you to click on. Inside Planner, I can go and run a Power BI report, right? With a click of like 2 or 3 buttons, and I've got a Power BI report telling me about performance. With Monday.com, I've got to go and engage with a third-party agency who's going to write an API integration to allow me to create a report and spit it out. Or, fairness, they might spit out their own unique report, absolutely, but you don't have their level of customization and control and security and bits and pieces that you're going to get within the Microsoft world. So if you are looking at project management tools, absolutely look at Planner, absolutely look at Project. Obviously, that's the big version of it. It's worth saying that 2 other things just to cover off really quickly is ease of use. That's hopefully self-explanatory in terms of it looks like every other Microsoft platform, so people that naturally adapt to it much faster, rather than learning a whole new interface in a third-party SaaS application. And cost is the obvious one, right? You're going to be paying for Monday.com, Planner, to-dos, things like that, all baked into your Microsoft 365 license already. So actually, you shouldn't need to go and buy more stuff. And of course, as your staff count decreases, if you've got that flexibility in your Microsoft licensing, as people offboard and people leave a project, you can scale it down. All right. You can buy these licenses individually as well. So if you're running a project for 6 months and you've got a load of contract workers, you can get them Planner licenses for a 6-month period and then just turn it off. Right. So what does Planner look like? So this is actually Planner inside Microsoft Teams. You know, we want to encourage everybody to be using Teams. All right. But these things that we're looking at here are buckets. So you can see across here, I've got these kind of tasks, these boxes with tasks and checklists in them. And they all sit in these columns. We call these columns buckets. This is known as a Kanban board, if anybody's in the development world. Those buckets might be long-term, short-term, active, in progress, completed, review, whatever it is. And I can complete those tasks and drag them into different buckets. We've also got the ability to view it in a grid mode, which you just saw a second ago, and also get information just straight out of a planner in a very simple report, which is showing me how on target are we, how much time have we spent on certain tasks, are we overrunning in certain areas. We've got a schedule. If you're used to like calendar views, I can drag my tasks in and just drop them on a calendar. It books them all in. And all of these things and these tasks get assigned to individuals within my business. So as soon as I assign a task here to Sam or to Louise, then what we end up with is that going into their Microsoft diary, or into their 365 diaries, or into their calendars. Okay, gets booked. They'll be booked out, and of course everything just starts to work together at that point, because actually, the project manager's just moved a task for me, and immediately the project management tool is saying, hey, look, Scott's not available at that time because he's got X meeting or Y meeting, or he's in quiet time, whatever that is. So but potentially it's gonna pull that blocker up. If I'm hosting another third-party application, you might not have access to my diary and view what I'm doing. So it all integrates so much more fluidly. So Planner, basically, I encourage you really just go have a play with it. It's really simple to get started with. All right, it makes sense after a few minutes, but basically think about buckets as being stages of a project, tasks being those tiles, those boxes we saw. You can create checklists, you can put more information in there, deadlines, dates, notes. You can attach documents to those tasks. Really, really powerful tool. And then obviously you can report out the back of it as well. Unlike Microsoft Project, the fully blown kind of high-end application version, a project that as a whole used to be a piece of software that you downloaded. It still is, to be fair, but you downloaded and you installed it into a really, really amazing, very, very feature-rich project management tool used by lots of project managers. Really aligns itself to using kind of the Prince 2 methodologies and everything that we need to do within a well-structured project delivery. But just to give you an idea what it looks like, it doesn't look too dissimilar in its web-based version. This is sort of a SharePoint version as well, to be fair. But on the side here, you can see that we've got things like timesheets out of the box, and issues and risks, and some of this terminology that we need to do within a fully blown project are just functions and things that get served up out of the fully blown project application as a whole. Also, we get kind of visually, I actually don't think it looks as pretty, if I'm honest with you, but allegedly it looks better. I don't think it does, but that's my view. So, but Resources Center, Report Center, Power BI integration, all those things, and I can't stress that enough, right? Automation and Power BI, those integrations into this are key. If it's a project you're delivering as a service within your business, then you absolutely want to be looking at, how long did it take us to do that thing? If something's overrunning, what action needs to be taken immediately to get it back on course and steer something back in the right direction? So you might want automation when something overruns by X number of hours. Inform this person. That's automation, right? Power BI, that constant reporting, that live dashboard that maybe is out inside, out across the floor, where all your staff are, so they can actively see, how well is something doing or badly. All right. So a key thing. Right, well, you'll be glad to know that we are going to wrap there. So a couple of things I just want to cover off before we finish and answer some questions if there are any. I mentioned it a few times actually, but we have got a webinar then next month. The focus of that is all around AI. So we're going to be talking about ChatGPT, so not necessarily all focused on Microsoft, so ChatGPT. And we'll probably talk about some of the cool things you can do in that. Okay. We will talk about Copilot, the web-based version, and Microsoft 365 Copilot, the version of it that allows us to see the data and the information we store inside our environment. So hopefully, if you are interested in AI, that'll probably be a really interesting one. If you're not interested in AI, it might not be a very interesting one, but we'll see. But as always, encourage you to go to Microsoft's website itself to go and find some more information about things that you can do within the Microsoft stack. There's oodles of it. And just really around the end user piece. That's what we're doing in this series, is really focusing on little tips and tricks on the end user to try and enhance some of what you do. We've done lots of these now. There's loads of stuff. So if you're interested in a particular team section, we've probably done 2 or 3 teams bits before where we've covered other stuff off, so we might have to repeat some of it soon. But also key things from us really is please keep watching these. We do lots of webinars and blogs and bits and pieces anyway. But also, if you are a TaylorMade customer, you can log into your portal, so portal.tech, and within there, there's kind of learning material and guides on how to use things, how to use the Office suite, basically, like that. And then thirdly, we did it earlier, right? So use Copilot. We had an example earlier where I said, how do I do this in Excel? So go to Copilot in Edge, hopefully, and ask it, how do I do something? Oh, I don't understand this, or why do I have to do that? Or can I do this in Microsoft Word? And it will answer that question for you because it's pretty rich. Right. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, and I encourage you to come and join me again next month. But if you have any questions, then please feel free to fire them into the chat. Right, lovely, lots of them, good. So will the slides and recording be available afterwards? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So what will happen is Sam will send out an email to everybody that's attended, just with a link basically to come back to our website and watch the video. So no problem at all. Can you show me how to start Copilot again? Yeah, no problem at all. So what I'll talk you through it. But again, you better watch how we did it. It's a little bit different depending on what version of Edge you've got. So if you've got a certain version of Edge, you might find a Copilot icon is in the top right hand corner of your Edge browser. That either means that your Edge browser isn't up to date, in which case it isn't there, or it's so up to date that they've removed it and they've put it somewhere else. So you just need to check. But ultimately, if you open up your homepage, the chances are you'll end up on the Bing web page or something along those lines. There's a little Copilot icon inside that. So probably best thing to do, if you are one of our customers, reach out to us and we'll just show you where it is. All right. So sadly, you might just keep moving the thing around. So isn't Power BI additional cost too? Yeah, absolutely. So apologies if I made that clear. It is. It's worth saying, there are things you can do inside Power BI that don't cost you. So it's when it starts to get really clever that it starts to cost you proper money. All right. So you're going to make very sort of personal reports that aren't pulling in lots of data from different places. You can do some of that within Power BI as it stands, but when you want to start collaborating, sharing dashboards, moving information around, pulling data in from all sorts of different sources, then Power BI gets more costly. But a lot of the planner stuff, actually the charting, the bits and pieces of that, you can do a certain amount of that inside Power BI anyway. Can you assign a task to multiple people? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the idea is that you effectively, you've got one task. You can have a checklist within that, okay, and you can say I want to deploy it to that team or to that department or to multiple people. That is absolutely doable. You mentioned exporting from Planner to Power BI. How is this done? So effectively, Power BI is done more from Power BI element pulling data in. So Power BI will you create contacts and links and kind of integration. So in Power BI, if you go File New, it'll say where do you want to pull this information from. You'll have a whole bunch of stuff in there around spreadsheets, SQL environments, X, Y, and Z. But you also have a section there for API integration. You can grab that data through something called the Microsoft Graph API. And if you go and look at, there's another webinar we've got which is focused on Power BI. And there's a whole piece in there about pulling in data from third-party sources and third-party applications. You can, because it's Microsoft within Power BI, you can leverage a whole bunch of tools that are already pre-built. If it's not in there, then you need to build an API integration. But that's sort of drag and drop now as well. So it shouldn't be too difficult, right? You will see tasks. Don't look for Planner when you're trying to import your data. Look for tasks, okay? Because they're basically tasks. So, but reach out. Happy to explain how you do that. Copilot on Teams to take minutes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great thing, right? I mean, so that we use it to take minutes. That's what we're using Copilot for. Now, sadly, that's Copilot for 365, not Copilot for web. Copilot for web can't see your company data, but Copilot on 365 can. There's also, worth saying, if you're only interested in taking minutes, I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it's like Teams Premium, which is a step above the standard Teams that you'll get, allows you to do various other advanced Teams pieces, such as transcribing, recording, and then creating minutes. So you can actually get the AI intelligence bit with another SKU above it. And that can be an individual user that you invite into your meetings that then just basically becomes a minuting thing. So that might be something to explore. But that's how you achieve it. Sorry, so mentioned, actually, can we show you how? Yes, but you will need a Microsoft Copilot 365 license. If you don't have that, you won't be able to do that piece, okay? Copilot is about £20 a user for the users that need it. You don't have to license everybody in a business. It can just be, if you are, let's say a PA, and actually you're always involved in all the meetings, maybe all the senior management meetings, and your job is there to sit there and take minutes. Just license yourself. As long as you join that meeting, it will start to transcribe and record all that stuff and then spit out minute meetings at the end of it. And you can, but don't forget, it's not just about getting minutes, it's about interrogating information, conversations that were had in it. Great from my perspective. If I miss a meeting or I'm not available, I can go back and look at that later on. Might only be interested in 2 or 3 things that happened in the meeting. So I can just ask questions to Copilot, like, what was the outcome of this? Did they discuss, did the team discuss X, Y, and Z, and what did they agree to do? when's the deadline for getting that thing done? And I don't need to worry about it. So right, perfect. So any more questions? Have I missed one? Oh, apologies. Yeah. How do I get planning teams? Right. So within Teams, you will have so when you open up a site, you'll have a load of kind of tabs across the top on Teams, and within that environment, you can click the little plus symbol, and what that means is it adds a new tab. When you choose to add a new tab, what you'll have inside that is the ability to choose something that you're going to embed. And that might be a spreadsheet, a Word document. It might be anything that you've got. So I don't know if they can't see that, can they? Sam's just opened it in front of me. I wasn't sure if he was about to actually demo it. But ultimately, you click a little plus, and you'll end up with kind of a grid, and it'll say add a Word document, embedded PowerPoint slide. I want you to link a whiteboard in. I want you to link an entire other third-party website in. One of those options in that list is Planner. So you just go and choose Planner, and then it will give you some options. It'll say, okay, well, which planner do you want to embed? Which plan is it that you want to have available? And then you pick the correct plan that you've created in Planner, and then you can embed it inside Teams. But to create the plan originally, I think it does give you the option now, I think, to create a new plan. But ultimately, if you click what we call the little waffle, so when you're in Office 365 in the web-based version, if you go and click the thing that's got kind of 9 little squares in it, you click on that, it will show you all the apps that you've got available. Hopefully Planner is listed in there. If you can't see Planner, go and click on More Apps, and within More Apps, it should show you all the apps you've got available, and you can choose Planner, and you can build a plan from there, all right? Right. So when is the next webinar? I think it is on the 26th of March. So, yeah, it's almost like I knew that. So can you save the plans in Microsoft 365 SharePoint and still access them in Teams? Yes. Depends what you're getting at there. So when you say save them in Microsoft 365 SharePoint, do you mean create a plan inside 365 and then get it into Teams? If that's your question, then yes, absolutely. Into OneDrive. So you can't save, you can export a plan and save it into OneDrive. But generally, when you're building a plan, it's building or something within Planner. You're actually saving it all within Planner. So it's not like you end up with a file at the end of it. It's just a cloud-based service, and all your information is stored inside that. So it's not like you export the plan. You just share that plan. It's a bit like a Word document, right? You share that plan with multiple people, and everyone just comes in and collaborates on the plan together. There is a webinar if that's of interest to you. We did a webinar specifically around Planner, I think. So if you reach out and just let us know, we can send you a link to that webinar, because I think we probably covered some of that stuff off in that anyway. But how do you reference it? URL. So you just basically, you can when you want to share to, then you can share it out. Depends how you're referencing it. If you're trying to you want to link, you want to grab its data into a spreadsheet, then really that's where Power BI comes in. There's something called Power Query in Excel, which will allow you to grab data out of the planner. So it's a conversation that kind of escalates depending on what you're trying to do. But if you just need to link to that plan, then you would just grab the URL, or you'd share it with an individual somewhere, right? Right. Well, if you haven't got any more questions, you are free to go, because there is no more content other than me waffling, answering any more questions that come up. But thank you very much for joining me yet again. Thank you to the marketing team again for setting it all up. Much appreciated. If you do have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to myself, to your account manager if you're our customer, and anything that we can do to support. Obviously, we're always here to try and support and widen. And hopefully you'll come again and join us for our next webinars. And if this was interesting, go back and look at our previous ones. Look for that term tips and tricks. There's lots of little kind of cool ideas that you can use within the platform to speed up what you're doing at the end point. So I encourage you to go and watch those on the website. All right. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Take care.